Now, a lot of you who have watched my channel over the years have seen me install Avast antivirus on hundreds of machines before, and I have always recommended it because it's actually a pretty decent product. It has some amazing features, including the ability to do a boot scan and potentially remove stuff outside of the Windows environment. So, as far as a free antivirus program goes, I've always thought it was pretty decent, and I would recommend it to my clients and to my viewers on YouTube. However, there are some things that have come to light that have really kind of made me second guess whether or not this is a decent product to put on your computer. And that is the purpose of today's video. Now, I will tell you, I have removed tens of thousands of viruses and malware infections off thousands of computers over the years. And honestly, I could do it in my sleep. I've done it for over 30 years. But understanding how malware and viruses actually work and all the behind the scenes stuff, that's really not what I do. I know a virus when I see it and I know how to remove it. But understanding the architecture of how they work was something that I hadn't really thought much about before until this recent thing came to light. Recently, Avast Antivirus was fined over $16 million by the Federal Trade Commission over potentially shady business practices. And that's what I want to talk about today. But because I don't know everything about it, I brought in a good friend of mine who is a malware and cybersecurity expert, and I'm going to pick his brain so that you guys, just like me, will understand more about what actually happened and maybe why you shouldn't use Avast or Windows Defender or any other free program for your antivirus solution. This is going to get interesting. Thanks so much for popping in and helping my viewers out. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Scott. How you doing, pal?
Cool. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Listen, I know you pretty well, but a lot of my viewers don't. So let's take a second and tell them about who you are, what you do, what your expertise is, how long you've been doing it, your channel, all that stuff.
Sure. Well, I'm Nico Knows Tech. I run the YouTube channel, self-titled Nico Knows Tech. Cover a lot of cybersecurity, which I've been working in for a long time. Best known for how to remove any virus in one step. And yeah, I've been in tech all my life.
Cool. So if people were to go check out your channel, what kind of content do you generally make?
A lot of tutorials. Me and you have a lot of overlap. We'll cover a lot of computer-related stuff. I also
Right.
cover product reviews, how-to guides, cybersecurity testing, and things like that.
So let's talk about what we're here to talk about today. Now, the conversation is about the Avast antivirus and the FTC issue that I mentioned in my intro. So explain to the viewers who may not understand exactly what happened, what Avast did that made the FTC come down on them and how all that played out.
So essentially, the FTC fined Avast for about $16.5 million for releasing or selling customer data, which that in and of itself isn't where the infraction occurred. It was that there was an understanding, an agreement with the client, a promise to viewers and users that they were not going to sell or collect this kind of data. And they ended up selling it through a subsidiary company under them.
Okay.
So when they were able to say that they didn't sell anything, Avast technically didn't, according to the report by the FTC,
Mhm.
but a company that they have at least a stake in and possibly ownership of
Okay.
was selling the data, and it was pretty invasive.
Okay. So was that kind of similar to the Facebook Cambridge Analytica thing a while back, or is it different in some way?
In a way, however, they actually Facebook used a different company to collect it. What it seems from the report is that Avast collected it, but another company sold it.
Okay.
So, but it was the same kind of very extensive information. I have the whole list here. It collected religious beliefs, health concerns, political leanings, locations, and even financial status. So it was pretty extensive information that they gathered from the clients.
I got you. So, for someone out there who might be considering a free antivirus program, what overall impact for a non-techie person, what kind of overall impact would something like this have on them if they chose to use a free program like Avast or Windows Defender or any of the free programs out there?
So a lot of the free antivirus are actually what I would call good, and some are very good. Avast's protection level, I would actually call a bit above average. I would
Mhm.
call it very good. However, there's one Achilles heel that all free antivirus have is that they use open source definitions. Sure, they have their own definitions, but any kind of 0-day detection, such as a new malware that's never been seen before, and it was
Right.
detected on the other side of the world by another company, and it was submitted to a malware database, which is typically the practice,
Okay.
that there's a 30-day wait before you can access open source definitions for free.
Okay.
So a paid antivirus will typically have instant access to a new detection of a massive threat on the other side of the planet,
Okay.
whereas Defender and everyone on the free side is not paying for anything. Therefore, it doesn't justify paying for those instant definitions as soon as they come out. So there might be a 30-day period where you're vulnerable for certain infections.
Okay, so now we're starting to get into how infections actually work and vulnerability. And I wanted him to explain a little bit more about what a 0-day infection actually is. Explain very basically what a 0-day is. You and I both know that, but other people might not. So if you're just an average person who possibly gets what's called a 0-day virus infection, how does the choice of antivirus programs that they have make a difference on whether or not they're protected against those 0 days?
When your antivirus detects a virus, how did it detect it? It recognized something that's already out there and has been identified, and a signature is attached to it, or it's identified its kind of profile, how it acts. But if it's never been seen before and you're patient zero, as it were, and the malware was written yesterday and they've given it to you and you clicked on it or whatever happened, that's never been seen. Antivirus don't know what it is, so it can't detect it. But let's assume that you are patient zero, your antivirus detects it, or you eventually detects it, or a company says that this is infecting a lot of people and it came out yesterday. Here's the signature for it. They put it out to the malware databases so it can stop the infection worldwide. Well, the free antivirus are still on a 30-day wait on that. It's going to take a while for them to get that new signature because it's never been seen before and you're not paying to have access to immediate definitions.
Okay, so and actually, I've used that analogy before to explain to people what a 0 day is, and I've always kind of equated it to patient zero, whether it was when AIDS was first coming out, or the SARS virus, or the the COVID or whatever. There's always a certain amount of time before someone even knows that there's a pattern, a problem. In this case, the virus comes out, and only the true quality high-end paid programs are going to generally detect those, because programs that are free are going to basically be on a waiting list, right?
Yeah, and there's terminology we use in anti-malware and antivirus security: quarantine, inoculation. So you could consider having that definition to be a vaccine.
That makes sense. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about Avast, and you and I have butted heads over this because I've used Avast many times in the past on client machines, and recommended it because I thought it was a pretty darn good free program. It actually did what it was supposed to do. But regarding this allegation, what was Avast doing? Were they, when you mentioned that they were, data privacy, were they collecting user data? I seem to recall that it was had something more to do with their browsing history and not so much their personal private data. Is that accurate?
So actually, it was much more extensive and a bit alarming, in my opinion, in that, like I said earlier, it was collecting even your religious beliefs, health concerns,
Okay.
political leanings, the locations that you've been traveling on while you're using the product, and
Okay.
even your financial status. And this type of anonymous data becomes less anonymous when you can literally describe a person to the T. I could describe you by giving 10 different attributes about you, knowing you as a friend, to where you're talking about Scott.
Okay.
When it gets to every single aspect, the fact that they remove the first name doesn't really help a lot.
Right.
And this
So
is
it's
how,
profiling basically.
yes, you film
Okay.
what's called a profile or a fingerprint on this exact type of an individual.
Okay.
And the problem isn't that they collected that, it wasn't consensual. And you don't make any money off it, but they collected a ton. And a lot of people were choosing Avast because, first off, it was actually a darn good product. I still think
Right.
it's a darn good product.
Agreed.
But one of the selling features is we won't collect data on you. We value your privacy. We will
Right.
not sell your data. We're different than the other guys. And
Right.
then we
Right.
found out, like, it doesn't seem that way.
Now, one thing I specifically wanted to talk to Nico about is the thing that most people are kind of battling with about: should I spend money on a program, or is the free program going to be good enough because I really don't do anything? And he addresses this perfectly as far as cost wise, because one of the things that I always try to recommend to my clients is that for pretty much every program out there, Yeah, as an example, Microsoft Office, which you pay for, versus say OpenOffice or LibreOffice, which is a free program, and it pretty much for 99.9% of what you do is going to work perfectly for free. Um, Say you're a low risk user, you basically still, you just do five, six, seven things, and you really don't go exploring the internet. And so the mindset for those people might be, I don't really do anything, so I don't really need that immediate antivirus protection. I can stay with the free one, like Avast or Windows Defender. Not just physical dollars wise, but what would be the overall cost difference really for a low risk user to say, you know what, I should spend a few dollars to have this kind of protection. Forget paying a computer guy to get rid of malware or viruses that you might have gotten because you aren't getting those immediate updates. But as far as like privacy and overall cost, what are your thoughts on that?
Excellent question, Scott. So it really depends on the user. You mentioned a user that maybe does 3 or 4 things. That type of user is becoming rare because of how our connected lives are becoming. Everything's online now. If you're
Right,
going to keep in contact with your kids, that's through Facebook. So if you have a valuable online or connected lifestyle, then it's prudent to protect that because things can happen. If
okay,
losing your Facebook, losing your online photos, losing your email and all your contacts there, or other types of what I would call your digital life.
right,
And you would see that a grandmother at home would be devastated if she lost all her photo albums, her
right,
physical photo albums. Most people have them digitally now. And
right,
then as but there is a class of connected user that I think doesn't necessarily need to spend any money on antivirus or even getting Avast necessarily, because Windows Defender is actually what I would call pretty good,
right,
as long as you are really somebody who does little on the internet. So you really only download software from the Microsoft Store, Steam, Adobe, the usual suspects, really well-known names.
right.
But if you're a user that has a lot of online contact with people on the internet that you don't know in person, then that's a risk factor. If you are somebody who is adventurous, and I wouldn't say irresponsible, but you're going to be searching through the internet saying, what kind of programs will do XYZ? You're going
Right.
into uncharted waters. And then for that, you would want to have some extra protection in those cases.
Why not just use Windows Defender? It's what comes with Windows. It's free. It apparently, everybody says it's pretty good. Um, are there reasons why someone, even though Defender is a good program, why somebody wouldn't necessarily want to use that in place of a quality paid for product?
So, two reasons. First is a false positives issue. You need to trust your antivirus, your security solution. And a very common issue with Defender is that it will alert on things that might not be a malicious, but it's very sensitive. So you get a higher rate of false positives. Now, here is where lies the problem. If you don't trust the detections of your solution, you are more likely to disable your antivirus solution so that you could run the program that you think is okay.
Right.
When you are wrong, you're double messed up, because first off, you're infected. Second,
Right.
you turned off your antivirus and prevented any kind of secondary mitigation. Now,
Right.
when I talk about mitigation, there's the second part of why Defender could be a liability to certain users is that when Defender or Windows security is infected, it's part of the operating system. You're going to
Okay.
lose mitigation. It's as soon as you take out Defender, you have
Right.
full reign of the operating system. On a separate, decentralized, like an antivirus suite, for example, it's
Right.
not part of the operating system, so it's an independent entity that can still mitigate damage or even remove the infection after the fact because it's not compromised when Windows is compromised.
So basically, if I'm hearing what you're saying, because the Defender, even though it's a great product, is tied directly into a Windows operating system. If you are a Windows user and someone figures out a way to just snap that bridge between Defender and the OS, basically that could make them even more vulnerable than they would be with any other antivirus product.
Yes, and also that you need to find a solution you trust. If you trust Defender and you're not going to override it on a regular basis and say,
Yeah.
no, I'm going to run this anyway and see what happens.
Right.
If you trust your antivirus and it's kept you good for the longest time, then I don't think there's a problem. But if you're overriding your antivirus, you're in really dangerous territory because you have a security solution even you don't trust. Why are you using it?
That's really kind of leading into my next question, because there's people out there who's been like, I've used Defender forever and I've never had a problem, but that doesn't mean you won't going forward, and that problem could be potentially pretty costly.
Yeah, and I would have them do a self-inventory and a self-assessment of what their uses
Right.
are and make that decision. There's a lot of people out there that use Defender and do not have problems, and I talk to them and I'm like, then you're fine, you're good.
Now, I'm pretty stubborn, and Nico has been on me for several years about switching to his favorite program. And of course, I wanted to stay with the tried and true, free, low cost solution. But he was able to convince me, and we're going to talk about a little bit here about why the program he recommends is actually better, even if you are one of those people that don't really do a whole lot. You and I have gone back and forth over your preferred antivirus product, and that is in fact ESET antivirus. Um, and even when I was all pro Avast and I was like, this program is great, it does fine, I don't necessarily need to spend money on it. I'm not going to recommend some paid for product because Avast does pretty darn good job and it finds viruses and does all that. Um, and you kept saying, no, you know what, ESET's the way to go. And you had partnered with them and started to really appreciate and understand the power of that program. And eventually you convinced me, you know what, this is actually worth the money, and not very expensive at all. But the I look at kind of like from the little bit of insurance mindset. So no matter what kind of driver you are, it's better to have extended coverage than your just minimum basic coverage. And that's kind of what made me believe that you were right on the money about ESET. So for those people who are just now tuning in and don't know anything about ESET, kind of give them a rough overview of what you told me and how you convinced me that ESET is actually worth the money and people should actually use it if they want true quality antivirus.
So the reason that I chose ESET and gravitated to it was whenever you're paying for any antivirus, and there were any malware is what we should be calling it now.
Right.
And there's a lot of great ones out there, Bitdefender, even Kaspersky. But why I gravitated to ESET and why I gravitate to paid at all is because you get features. So when you have just a basic scanner, you're kind of limited there, but I get a hardened firewall. I get intrusion detection system, network protection. It stops me from hackers.
Okay.
But one reason why I went with ESET as opposed to Bitdefender, which is always up in the top list, or
Right.
Kaspersky is, well, first off, Kaspersky is having its own problems right now, being
Right.
banned in the United States due to an alleged
Russia. Right.
affiliation with Russia.
Right.
We'll see where that actually goes, but that's the current world we're in. And then Bitdefender doesn't even have an enterprise solution. So they're only a consumer product. And
Okay.
where the difference between like ESET that has a lot of government contracts and deals with a lot of very heavy assets is they develop and put a lot of money into these very high-end features, which I can talk about shortly,
Okay.
that benefit just like how Honda Racing develops a lot of tech, and then that VTech will come into the Honda Civic, for example.
Okay.
So I gravitated to ASET because it has multi levels of security and
Right.
features that make sense to protect me from a lot of very high level threats.
So the consumer is getting the benefit of everything that ESET has done, all the money they've poured into making the best technology they can. Is that
Oh,
fair?
and another thing is I like the methodology and how they protect you. So Bitdefender, by definition, I love them, by the way, they're great. They have a bit of post-infection pre-infection detection and protection, but
Right.
they focus a lot on mitigating after infection, such as rewind or unencrypting your files if they're hit by ransomware and
Okay.
quickly fixing it. ESET has a execution. So before you even click on things, before it's running on the system, it has a bunch of layers to stop it from ever executing, rather than having a bunch of contingencies to help after you're already essentially messed up on your machine. It still has those there, but it more
Right.
focuses like, let's prevent the infection from ever landing on your computer.
Right.
And most of
So
all,
it's like
not
a
even getting executed.
like a virtual sandbox, really.
They actually do have one. It's called LiveGuard. It's on the premium and ultimate and above
Okay.
category. And what that is, it's a very high-end feature
Right.
that is really extensive. So when you download a new program, you've downloaded whatever exe file, install, whatever. When
Right.
you double click on this, it's not going to execute immediately. Nothing looks wrong, but what's happening behind the scenes is it's running it at ESET HQ in a sandbox to see what it does
Right.
before and see if it breaks anything, violates security. And then when ESET says it's okay, this all happens in like 5 seconds. It's really
Okay.
fast.
Wow.
And then if it checks out okay, then it will run. So
Okay.
it's testing it on someone else's rig. And then you can also override it, because I've actually ran programs that were protected by LiveGuard, and it took like 15 seconds because it was a big file. And I
Right.
said, you know what? I know what this is. And I just clicked to run anyway. And it
Okay.
let me execute it, but it still ran it at the sandbox, and it would come back with a result either way. And if I
I
had run a virus and overran it, it would say, hey, what you just ran was a virus. We're going to lock that down now.
Okay.
So
So if I hear what you're saying, so like for a basic novice user who for the safety of their PC would be willing to say, you know what, 3, 4, 5 seconds to make sure that a file that I didn't mean to click on or accidentally downloaded is safe, that could potentially save them hundreds of dollars in computer repair. But for those of us who are mid-level or higher, if we already know, for example, that this file is safe, you can just skip the check delay, even though it's still going to be tested and verified at ESET, but you can continue on. So there's really no delay on your end. Is that fair?
yeah, that's absolutely 100% correct. And you just reminded me that it goes a step further. In addition, it also protects your webcam from activating. So when you open up, for example, StreamYard, ESET's going
Okay.
to say, StreamYard's trying to open up this webcam. Are you sure you want
Right.
to do this? Once you
Right.
approve that, it allows it. What's more is a lot of people are getting infected by buying flash drives from like Wish or other places, or that are infected, and then you
Right.
plug the USB and it immediately infects your machine. Well, all the ESET products have device guard, which will actually scan these things before letting them run or even automatically open up a folder. So
Okay.
it's really about stopping things from penetrating the walls, you could say, of your castle.
I got you. That'll actually help out all my clients who have black electrical tape over their webcam screen because they're paranoid about somebody accessing their webcam. And you
And they
know what?
should be.
Agreed, but that's a nice feature that ESET is like, look, unless you specifically allow it, it's not getting turned on. And that's as far as privacy goes, even if it may or may not be a privacy issue, it's knowing that ESET is sitting there taking care of you.
All of Facebook headquarters and Google headquarters, they all have tape over their webcams because that is an extremely common exploit. If you click on the wrong thing on a website, get infected, one of the most common things to do is to flip on the webcam. So
Wow.
it's extremely easy to do. So you need to
Wow.
protect that.
Without sounding like an ESET commercial, because that wasn't my intention with this video. You told me about this product, and after I heard you explain over and over again about all the reasons why, especially as a computer professional, I need to be using this product and recommending this product. One of the things that we talked about was the Lojax BIOS virus that came out a little while back, and how it was literally devastating to a lot of people, destroying their motherboards and their BIOS and all that. And one of the reasons what that hooked me was that when we talked about ESET, you told me that Lojax was first discovered by ESET's antivirus laboratories. Is that a fair statement? Like they were the ones right on the front lines, right?
Yes, and this is very personal to me. So what Lojax is, for the viewers that don't know, is essentially a motherboard virus. It infects the SMI flash, the storage flash of the motherboard. And for most people on the planet, it's not removable. And people thought that these were so rare or so impossible to get that the hacker would have to be physically at your keyboard, and
Right.
that's just no longer the case. You can literally get this kind of infection over the internet. But ESET discovered it, and I actually had this infection on a laptop I had, and it took the better part of a year to figure out what was going on until one of my IT friends put ESET on there, and it detected a firmware UEFI firmware rootkit, and it said
Wow.
Lojax on it. Then I
Wow.
Googled what that was, and it was an ESET article talking about how they had discovered that like a month prior. And then I said, oh, well, I could have used this information a year ago. I'm just going to change
Right.
the motherboard. I'm done. So as of that date,
Yeah.
ESET actually scans your motherboard and your UEFI, your BIOS, looking for infections. I
Right.
don't think there's any other antivirus on the planet that actually look for that kind of stuff because it's a
Right.
real thing. Most antivirus companies don't believe those things are a thing to worry about.
And just so the any novice users who are listening, so they understand what all those words that you just used, the UEFI and the BIOS or whatever, and that is your BIOS is basically the hardware instructions that are on your main motherboard that tell all the connected devices how to work and how to operate. If you get infected at that level, most people are only used to Windows infections or their whatever operating system they're using. But when you get a hardware infection, that could literally cause physical hardware damage, which will end up costing you a ton of money. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Right
Okay,
on.
cool. So now, and this is another one of those things that I was really excited about when we first started talking about ESET, when I was still using other programs, and you were like, you really need this, because this also ties into the fact that they discovered Lojax, but how it ties into the 0-day research capabilities that ESET has. I just think that it's phenomenal, and I think that certainly if you want quality protection, that's definitely a consideration for your average consumer user, even if they don't do a whole lot online.
Yeah, absolutely. And I trust them. And that's when I was talking about how if you can't trust your antivirus because of false positives,
Right.
uh, my experience with ESET is extremely low false positives. And in fact, I tell all my friends or even viewers, don't override ESET. It doesn't
Right.
alert on things that it thinks you shouldn't be doing, like um, Microsoft, if you will, alert on things that
Right.
words we can't say on YouTube, but you probably should pay for that. It's not going to tell you how to live your life. If you're doing things you're not supposed to do, ESET's take on it is, well, at least you won't be infected.
And like I said, I was very stubborn when we met a couple years back, and I really appreciate you taking the time, even with me as a fellow professional, to say, "Look, I know you think this is good, and I'm not trying to sell you on it, but you need to know better." And honestly, when I switched to ESET, I've been super happy with it. I personally am probably not going to be recommending free software simply because of the 0-day virus definition delay, unless you are perfectly willing to wait 30 days to get updated antivirus definitions. I think spending a little bit of money, regardless of what program people choose, whether it's ESET or Bitdefender or whatever, I 100% think that a free antivirus solution is probably not the way to go, even if you don't do a whole lot.
I would say that if your digital connected life is valuable, treat
Yeah,
it like your home.
right,
You would put a decent deadbolt on your door, and if it's a very valuable thing to you, then put in a camera security system. But if it's just a tool shed with
right,
nothing in there but your old hammer, well, then
right.
maybe it needs nothing more than a padlock.
Hey, if you guys have made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I hope Nico and I explained ESET in a way that didn't sound like we were trying to sell it to you. This is just a good program, and if you choose to use Avast or Windows Defender or any other free program or any other paid for program, that is 100% cool. I just wanted to tell you as a professional why I chose to switch, why I think that most people should if they value their privacy, and honestly that I found an amazing program that I'm 100% sticking with. Now, full disclosure, like Nico, I did partner with ESET because this is an amazing program. So if you decide to use ESET, check the link in the description. I was able to work out an amazing deal with these guys to hook you guys up and make sure that you not only get what I think is some of the best protection out there, but at a huge discount. So if you want to check it out, click the link in the description. It'll help my channel out a little bit. And let me know in the comments what you think about ESET. I appreciate you so much for coming on and explaining that part of our world that even I don't know that well. I appreciate you educating me. And for anybody who's out there watching, definitely check this guy out. I'll put all of his links in the description. Should be one above his head. His name's Nico, and reach out to him. He's very responsive with his viewers. He loves taking suggestions for new video content, and definitely get on his channel, watch some of his stuff, pick his brain. And if you do reach out to him, let him know that Scott sent you. Nico, thanks again so much, buddy. I appreciate it.